Hi, fifth graders. Today we are going to be working on The Road to Freedom, Chapter 8. Before we start reading, let's look at what our goal is for the day. What is our target? Our target today is to be able to analyze illustrations. So we're really looking at, can we delve deeper into our illustrations? Can we look at them and identify deeper meaning in the illustrations? And the illustrations are the images. In Road to Freedom, they're drawings. Sometimes illustrations can be, like we've talked about with text features, maps, actual photos. So there are different ways illustrations can be represented. In Road to Freedom, they're drawings. Our vocabulary word for today is hunched, and you might have already seen the definition. I want you to think about the definition of hunched, and you might not be able to come up with a specific definition, but if I were to ask you right now with your body to hunch over, what do you do? What does your body do when I say hunch over? So a lot of you might have already figured out when you hunch over, you're kind of leaning forward. You're bent over. That's what hunched is. So the definition I gave is bent over. So we're going to hear that word hunched today, and it's probably going to talk about the way someone's body is seen, or when they saw a person, they were hunched or bent over. Our skill that we're going to continue working on, we've worked on this a little bit, is word families. So we looked at word families a little bit, and today we're going to use the word passenger to help us look at some of those other meanings. So what does passenger mean? A passenger is someone who's moving from one place to another. So we can assume that anything that has the word pass in it is some kind of movement from one place to another. So we have a couple words over here: impasse, trespass, passport, and surpass. And if you have no idea what any of these words mean, you can at least assume they have something to do with movement, going from one place to another. So impasse is actually kind of like the inability to move, not being able to get anywhere. You're at an impasse. You're kind of stuck. The next one is trespass. So you have probably seen those signs that say no trespassing. It means you're not allowed to come here. You're not allowed to go from one place to a next on this property. So it's really not moving. Passport, I really think this is a cool word because you can break it into two words, pass and port. So pass, again, like we just said, is that movement from one place to another. A port is like where the ships land, where they dock, where you have a lot of goods moving from one place to another. So when you think about it, it's a country, like moving from one country to another. And a passport is a little booklet that allows you to get into other countries. So we have U.S. passports because we live in the United States, and they issue us the passports, and we're allowed to go to any countries that we're friendly with or that we are allowed to go into. And the last one is surpass. Surpass actually means to go like above. So even if you had no idea what those four words meant, by looking at that word pass and thinking about a passenger, what does a passenger do? You can get that there's some kind of movement happening. Okay, so let's jump into our chapter 8 of Road to Freedom. And again, just to remind you, we're trying to analyze the illustrations today. So chapter 8, we're getting really close to the end of our book. We only have a little itty bitty bit to go. Chapter 8. Back on the plantation, when Papa was with us still, he told Mama about a woman named Harriet Tubman, who escaped and came back south again and again, bringing folks north to freedom. Papa said she never lost a passenger. I hoped Mama and I would be safe with her. So even looking at this image, before we even look at what we just read, we see a man holding a young child. So far in this story, the only man we've really heard about and known very much about was Emma's father. So we can probably assume from this picture that this is what we call a flashback. So going back in time and looking at just a small moment in her memory. So you can see that's Papa holding Emma on his lap and then her mom sitting off to the side. So we can see a lot from this picture without even reading the text. We know that this is a flashback, a memory of Emma's. Okay, our next page, 46, is all words, but here are the images to go along with that text. So what do you see here? What do you see? So what I see is I see lots of different posters that all say $40,000 reward. And yet it looks like they're all for different people, right? Up here we have a woman. Here we have a man. Here we have what looks like a really old woman. Okay. This looks like the same image as up here, but there we have 3 different people, and yet they're all being offered a $40,000 reward. Okay, and this here, this is a perfect picture of hunched, that vocabulary word hunched. So let's see what this is all about. Try and think. I want you to make a prediction just from that illustration. What's going on here? What do you think? Miss Harriet had friends everywhere we went, but we still had to be careful. She showed us how to watch for a light in a window or a flag blowing in the wind to know if we were safe. We slept in barns and hid away in attics. Sometimes Miss Harriet would change clothes and look like a man. Sometimes she'd use a cane and walk hunched over like an old woman. It was no wonder she couldn't be caught by bounty hunters. She was always one step ahead. In one home where we hid, someone said there was a $40,000 reward for capturing her. I couldn't count much, but I knew that was a whole heap of money. And that's a lot of money for us even to date, but back then, that was a lot of money. Probably over $1 million. I don't know for sure, but a lot of money. We crossed rivers and walked till my feet were covered in blisters, but tired as we were, Harriet never let us stop. How much longer? I'd ask when I got tired. Harriet answered by walking faster. So what do you see in these illustrations? What are you seeing on these 2 pages? Can you make a prediction about what's going to happen based on those illustrations? I'll show you one more time. One night, with a light snow falling all around us, we crossed into the north. Philadelphia, Harriet called it. Philadelphia was filled with people in houses all close together. A lot of people were free Negroes, dressed fine. Looked like freedom had a way of making them walk a little bit taller. Mama looked different too, proud that she'd made it to freedom and happy to have me beside her, safe from the auction block. Just when we got settled in good with a friend of Harriet's, she sat us down. Your journey's not over yet, she told us. Your master is still looking, and he posted a reward for you both. Even though you're in the north, the law says your master still has claims on you. So the only way you can really be safe is if you go on into Canada. So even this simple illustration can already tell us a lot about what's going to happen next. Mama nodded, like she already knew. Are you coming with us? I asked. Harriet shook her head no and told us she was heading back south. There were more people who needed her help. Mama and I would be alone again. A carriage brought us through town into the train depot. A real train this time on real tracks that would take us all the way to New York. Why does she say that? Why does she say a real train this time? As if she's referring to a train that wasn't real. Why does she point out this time it's a real train? Because they were on the Underground Railroad. So they were already on a train, But it wasn't a real train. It was just going from house to house, place to place. And so that's why she's pointing out that this time they're actually on a real railroad with a real train. Harriet had friends on this train who could help us once we reached Buffalo. It's in New York. And from there, we would be taken to cross the river into Canada. We climbed aboard the last car, and Harriet handed us blankets and food. Mama turned to say something to Harriet, but before we knew it, she was gone. Okay, so that's the end of that chapter. Remember, our focus today was to analyze the illustration. So let's do a couple quick questions about what we read, and then let's try and analyze some of those illustrations. So how did Harriet Tubman help Emma and Mama achieve their goal? Overall, how did Harriet Tubman help Emma and her mom achieve their goal or get to their goal? What do you think? Well, first off, she guided them, right? She helped get them from place to place. She told them how to get there. And even when she wasn't able to move with them, like at the end of this chapter, it said she got them on the train and told them where to go. So even though she wasn't there right next to them, she had guided them, told them how to get from place to place. She also taught them some strategies for how to find safe places, to look for the light in the window, the flag blowing in the wind. She also helped in that there was that moment where Emma was saying she was tired, and instead of stopping and saying, oh, it's going to be okay, we'll give you a break, Harriet would walk faster. She was pushing them. She knew what they needed. They needed to get to safety. They needed to get to the north. And so she pushed them to get them what they really needed. How was Emma and her mom's travel in this chapter different from their travel in previous chapters? Again, how was their travel in this chapter similar or different from previous chapters that we've read? Take a minute and think about it. What do you think? So I already kind of commented on it when I talked about the train. In this chapter, at the end of the chapter, they're actually getting on a train with wheels on the track that's going to move them from place to place. But in the past, they were having to get from place to place on their own, either by walking, getting on wagons. Remember, they had to hide in the potato cart, and they had that burlap sack against their skin, bumping around. They had to hide under the floor of that old woman's house. So this part of the journey almost seems safer. Now that they're on a real train, it seems safer to me. Less can go wrong. They're not going to be having to figure out where to go because the train's going to take them. They're not having to make every decision every step of the way. All right, let's look at those illustrations. Again, we had on this one page with Harriet Tubman, right, all of these images. And they kind of explained in that next page what was going on here. But it says that none of the pictures look like the same person. But we know that they're all Harriet Tubman. So the illustrations here show us why it was so hard to catch Harriet Tubman, because she was able to change her appearance so easily and so often that it makes sense that no one was able to actually catch up to her. We see a couple different images, right? We talked about the hunched over old woman, we talked about the man, and we talked about the regular looking woman. So you can imagine if someone is trying to find her and they're told, well, she looks like this, if they come across someone looking like this, they're not even going to suspect. So this illustration gives us a really good idea of why it was so hard to catch her and why she was so good at what she did. Another thing that this picture shows us is that cash rewards, that she was very valuable, that they wanted her caught. They didn't want her helping slaves and freeing them. She was a really important person for the Underground Railroad because she got so many people to freedom. And we're actually going to talk about that a little bit in the future when we continue reading the book. So I can't wait to show you that information when we get there. Until then, have a great day. Bye, guys.